Hello, and welcome to another episode of Learn English with Podcast Conversation. Today's episode is all about improving your speaking skills by mastering how to introduce yourself to new people.
Exactly. Introducing yourself may seem simple, but it's a crucial skill that helps you make connections, especially when you meet someone for the first time. And guess what? Listening to podcasts like this one is a fantastic way to improve your listening and speaking skills.
That's right, Thomas. As you listen, you'll learn how to express yourself clearly and confidently. Plus, it's a great opportunity to pick up new vocabulary and phrases you can use in real-life conversations.
Listening to conversations between fluent speakers helps you understand the rhythm and flow of English, which can boost your communication abilities. And by following along, you'll not only improve your listening, but also develop stronger speaking habits.
So, by the end of this episode, we hope you feel more confident introducing yourself to others. Let's dive in. So, let's start with why a good introduction is so important. Thomas, what do you think?
Well, Jennifer, a strong introduction sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. It's your chance to create a positive first impression, which is crucial when meeting someone new.
Absolutely. First impressions are lasting, and they can shape the way people perceive you. A well-thought-out introduction can make you more memorable, which is always a good thing in both social and professional settings.
Exactly. A solid introduction can also make you feel more comfortable in a conversation. Once you start with confidence, it helps the entire interaction flow more smoothly.
And let's not forget that it's also a way to open the door for more conversation. A good introduction invites people to ask questions and engage with you, which is key to building a connection.
Definitely. And when you include something unique or personal, it makes you stand out, which can help the other person remember you better.
Right. It's those little details that make your introduction not just informative, but also engaging. Now that we know why a good introduction matters, let's break down a simple structure you can follow when introducing yourself.
Sure. The first step is pretty straightforward. Say your name. It's simple, but it's the most important part because it helps the other person know how to address you.
Exactly. After sharing your name, it's helpful to mention where you're from. This gives context, especially when you're in a situation where people are from different places.
Right, and mentioning where you're from can also be a conversation starter, especially if the other person has been to or knows something about your hometown or country.
After that, it's great to talk about what you do, whether it's your job, your studies, or even a project you're working on. This adds more depth to your introduction and helps the other person understand a bit more about you.
Exactly. And finally, adding a personal detail, like a hobby or something you enjoy doing in your free time, can make the introduction more interesting and help create a connection.
That's right. Hobbies or fun facts give people something to relate to and make your introduction feel more natural and engaging.
So, the structure is name, where you're from, what you do, and a personal detail. Simple, but effective.
All right, now that we have the structure, let's put it into practice. I'll start by introducing myself, ... Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm originally from Chicago, and I work as an English teacher. In my free time, I love hiking in nature and experimenting with painting landscapes.
That's a great introduction, Jennifer. You've included all the key elements: your name, where you're from, your profession, and a personal touch with your hobbies. Now it's my turn. Hello, I'm Thomas. I'm from Los Angeles, and I work as a graphic designer. I have a passion for photography, and I also play the guitar in a local band on the weekends.
Fantastic, Thomas. Your introduction is engaging and gives a clear picture of who you are, both personally and professionally.
Thanks, Jennifer. Now it's your turn, listeners. Take a few moments to introduce yourselves using the structure we've discussed.
And remember, practice makes perfect. The more you practice introducing yourself, the more confident and natural you'll sound in real conversations. Before we move on, let's talk about some common mistakes people make when introducing themselves. Thomas, have you noticed any that learners often struggle with?
Yes, definitely. One mistake I see often is people speaking too fast. When you're nervous, it's easy to rush through your introduction, which can make it hard for others to understand you.
That's a good point. It's important to speak slowly and clearly, especially when you're meeting someone for the first time. Rushing through an introduction can make it difficult for the other person to catch your name or any details about you.
Another mistake is giving too much information. While it's great to share about yourself, overwhelming the other person with too many details right at the beginning can be a bit much.
Exactly. Keep it simple and concise. Focus on the key points, like your name, where you're from, and a personal detail. You can always expand on things later in the conversation.
One more mistake is forgetting to smile or make eye contact. Nonverbal communication is just as important as what you say. A warm smile and friendly eye contact can make your introduction much more approachable.
Absolutely, these little nonverbal cues can make a big difference in how you're perceived by others. So take a deep breath, smile, and speak clearly. It'll help you make a positive impression right from the start. Now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about how introductions can change depending on the context. Thomas, do you think you'd introduce yourself the same way in a formal setting versus an informal one?
Not quite, Jennifer. In a formal setting, like a business meeting or a job interview, your introduction should be a bit more professional. You'd focus on your job title or role and keep things more structured.
Exactly. For example, you might say, "Hello, my name is Jennifer. I'm an English teacher, and I specialize in helping students improve their communication skills." That's clear and to the point, and it keeps the focus on your professional life.
Right, whereas in an informal setting, like meeting someone at a social event, you can be a bit more relaxed. You might say something like, "Hi, I'm Thomas. I'm a graphic designer, and I love photography and music."
And you can be a bit more personal too. Sharing something like a hobby or a fun fact is a great way to connect in informal settings.
Yes, in fact, in informal situations, people tend to remember you better if you share something relatable or unique. It helps create a natural flow in the conversation. So now that we've covered how to introduce yourself, let's talk about what happens next. What should you do after someone introduces themselves to you?
Good question. The best way to keep the conversation going is to show interest in what the other person has shared. Ask a follow-up question or make a comment about something they mentioned.
Exactly. For example, if someone says they love hiking, you could say, "Oh, that's great. I love hiking too. What's your favorite trail?" This keeps the conversation alive and shows that you're interested in what they have to say.
And it also helps you find common ground, which is important in building rapport with someone new. Even if you don't share the same hobbies, you can ask questions to learn more about them.
That's a great point. Asking questions shows that you're engaged in the conversation, and it helps the other person feel valued and heard.
And don't forget to listen carefully. Sometimes we're so focused on what we're going to say next that we forget to really listen to the other person. Take the time to absorb what they're saying before responding.
Yes, active listening is a key part of communication. It makes the other person feel respected and keeps the conversation flowing naturally.
Introducing yourself in a one-on-one situation is one thing, but what about when you're in a group setting? Thomas, do you think there's a different approach?
Definitely. In a group, it's important to be concise, but also make sure everyone knows who you are. You might start with your name and then share something that's relevant to the group or situation.
For example, if you're in a meeting or group project, you could say something like, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'll be working on the communications part of this project." That gives everyone a clear idea of who you are and what your role is.
Exactly. And in a social group, you could say, "Hi, I'm Thomas. I'm new to the group, but I'm excited to get to know everyone." It's short but friendly, and it opens the door for others to introduce themselves or start a conversation with you.
It's also helpful to make eye contact with different people in the group when you introduce yourself. That way, everyone feels included, and it shows that you're engaged with the entire group, not just one person.
Great point. Group introductions can feel a bit tricky at first, but the key is to keep it simple and clear and make sure you're addressing everyone.
And remember, being confident in your introduction helps set a positive tone for how the group interacts with you. Now, let's talk about introducing yourself at professional networking events. These situations can feel a little intimidating, right, Thomas?
Definitely. Networking events are designed to connect people, but introducing yourself can sometimes feel nerve-wracking. The key is to be clear and concise, but also confident.
Exactly. You want to strike a balance between professionalism and approachability. In a networking event, you might introduce yourself by stating your name, your profession, and a little about what you're looking for.
For example, "Hi, I'm Thomas. I'm a graphic designer, and I'm looking to connect with other creatives in the industry." That's simple, yet it gives people an idea of who you are and what your goals are.
That's a great example, Thomas. It's also helpful to have a quick elevator pitch ready. This is a short description of who you are and what you do, typically 30 seconds or less, that you can use when meeting new people in a professional setting.
Right, and don't forget to follow up by asking questions about the other person. Networking is about building relationships, so showing interest in others is just as important as sharing about yourself.
Exactly. Asking questions like, "What do you do?" or "What projects are you working on?" keeps the conversation flowing and helps establish a connection.
And remember, after the event, it's always a good idea to follow up with the people you meet. It shows that you value the connection and are interested in staying in touch.
These days, introductions happen not only face-to-face, but also online. Thomas, how would you approach introducing yourself on social media or online platforms?
Online introductions are a bit different, but the basics remain the same. You want to be clear about who you are and what you're about, but you also have more space to showcase your personality.
That's a great point. For example, on LinkedIn, you might introduce yourself with a professional headline that summarizes your work, like digital marketing specialist, helping businesses grow online. It's short, but it tells people exactly what you do.
Yes, and on more casual platforms like Instagram or Facebook, you can be a bit more relaxed. Your introduction might include what you enjoy or your hobbies, like, "Hi, I'm Thomas, graphic designer and music lover, exploring creativity every day."
And don't forget about online forums or communities. When you're joining a new group, it's helpful to introduce yourself and share a bit about your interests. That way, you can connect with others who have similar hobbies or goals.
Right. Just like in real life, being genuine in your online introductions is important. People appreciate honesty and personality, even through a screen.
So whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, or any other platform, your online introduction should reflect who you are in a way that's authentic and approachable. Now that we've covered several types of introductions, it's important to practice them for different situations. Thomas, what's a good way for our listeners to practice their introductions?
One effective way is to role-play different scenarios. For example, you can practice how you'd introduce yourself at a networking event, then switch and practice a more casual introduction for a social gathering.
That's a great idea. You can also record yourself introducing yourself. This allows you to hear how you sound and make adjustments to your tone, speed, and clarity.
Another tip is to practice with a friend or a language partner. Have them ask you different questions about yourself so you can get comfortable sharing various aspects of your life in a natural way.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more natural your introductions will feel. And over time, you'll be able to adapt your introduction to any situation without feeling nervous.
Remember, it's not just about the words you say, but also about how you present yourself. Practicing good posture, smiling, and maintaining eye contact can make a huge difference in how your introduction is received.
That's such an important point, Thomas. So, listeners, take some time to practice different introductions this week. It'll help you feel more confident and prepared, no matter who you're meeting. Let's not forget that introductions can vary depending on cultural norms. Thomas, have you noticed how introductions change across different cultures?
Yes, absolutely. In some cultures, introductions are more formal, while in others, they're very relaxed. For example, in some Asian cultures, it's common to use formal titles and show respect through body language, like bowing slightly.
That's right. And in many Western cultures, a firm handshake and direct eye contact are common. It's always important to be aware of these cultural differences when you're introducing yourself.
Exactly. In more formal settings, like business meetings, you may want to use someone's full name or title, especially if that's the norm in their culture. In casual settings, using first names might be perfectly fine.
And some cultures might prioritize group introductions over individual ones. For example, in some countries, it's common for someone to introduce you to a group rather than you introducing yourself individually.
It's a good idea to observe how others are introducing themselves in these situations. If you're unsure, it's always polite to ask or follow the lead of the person introducing themselves first.
Exactly. Being mindful of these cultural considerations shows respect and makes your introduction more appropriate for the setting. Now, let's talk about something that affects a lot of people: nerves. Thomas, do you ever get nervous when introducing yourself?
Oh, definitely, especially in formal situations or when I'm meeting someone important. But I've learned a few tricks to help manage those nerves.
That's great. What's one of your go-to techniques?
I like to take a deep breath before I start speaking. It helps me slow down and stay calm. Also, practicing my introduction beforehand helps me feel more prepared, which reduces the anxiety.
I love that advice. Preparation really is key. And if you remind yourself that everyone gets nervous sometimes, it takes some of the pressure off.
Exactly. Another tip is to focus on the other person. Instead of worrying about how you sound, shift your attention to them. It helps distract you from your own nerves and makes the conversation more natural.
That's a great point. And remember, most people are understanding. If you stumble over a word or forget what to say, it's okay. Just keep going, and the conversation will flow naturally.
Yes, don't be too hard on yourself. Introductions don't have to be perfect. They just need to be genuine.
Now that we've talked about handling nerves, let's focus on building confidence in your introductions. Confidence plays a big role in how you come across, right, Thomas?
Absolutely. Confidence can make a huge difference in how others perceive you. When you're confident, you appear more trustworthy, capable, and approachable.
Exactly. So, how can our listeners build more confidence when introducing themselves?
One way is to practice, and practice. The more you introduce yourself in different settings, the more comfortable and confident you'll feel. You could start with friends or colleagues and then move on to strangers or more formal settings.
That's a great point. Another tip is to remind yourself that you have valuable experiences and qualities to share. Knowing what you bring to the table can boost your confidence when introducing yourself.
I like that. It's also helpful to prepare a few different versions of your introduction so you're ready for any situation. Having these scripts ready can make you feel more in control.
Definitely. And don't forget about body language. Standing tall, making eye contact, and smiling can all help you appear more confident even if you're feeling a little nervous inside.
Exactly. So, remember to practice, believe in yourself, and use confident body language. These small changes can really boost how you feel during introductions.
Let's move on to formal situations where introductions can be more structured. Thomas, what do you think is important when introducing yourself in a formal setting?
In formal situations, such as job interviews or business meetings, your introduction needs to be professional and clear. This means using your full name, stating your position or role, and mentioning any relevant experience or qualifications.
Exactly. For example, you might say, "Hello, my name is Jennifer Lee. I'm a marketing manager with over 10 years of experience in the digital marketing space." This is professional, direct, and gives the other person a quick overview of who you are.
Yes, and it's also important to consider the setting. In some formal situations, it might be appropriate to use titles like Mr. or Doctor when addressing others, especially if you're not sure how they prefer to be addressed.
That's a good point. And don't forget to offer a firm handshake if it's culturally appropriate. In formal settings, a good handshake can leave a positive first impression.
Exactly. And when you introduce yourself, be sure to speak clearly and at a moderate pace. You want the other person to easily understand what you're saying without rushing through your introduction.
Right. Formal settings may seem intimidating at first, but with a clear, confident introduction, you'll be off to a great start. Now, let's switch gears and talk about informal situations, like when you're meeting someone at a social gathering. Thomas, how would you approach an informal introduction?
In informal settings, you can be much more relaxed. You don't have to worry as much about structure or formality. It's more about being friendly and approachable.
Right, you can simply say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. Nice to meet you." It's casual, quick, and opens the door for a more relaxed conversation.
Yes, exactly. You could also add a little more, like mentioning where you're from or what brought you to the event. For example, "Hi, I'm Thomas. I'm from New York and I love hiking." It gives people a bit more to connect with.
That's a great tip. And in informal settings, it's also important to smile and make eye contact. These small gestures help show that you're friendly and open to conversation.
Yes, being approachable is key in informal settings. The more relaxed you are, the easier it will be for others to feel comfortable around you.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to be yourself and keep things light in informal introductions. It's all about making a friendly first impression. Let's talk about nonverbal communication. Thomas, how important is body language when introducing yourself?
It's extremely important. Sometimes your body language speaks louder than your words. Things like posture, eye contact, and facial expressions can influence how people perceive you before you even start speaking.
That's so true. For example, standing tall with your shoulders back gives the impression of confidence, while slouching or avoiding eye contact might make you seem unsure or disengaged.
Yes, and smiling is another powerful tool. A genuine smile can make you appear friendly and approachable, which is especially important when meeting new people.
Absolutely. And don't forget about gestures like a firm handshake or a nod of acknowledgement. These small actions can show respect and help establish a positive connection from the start.
Exactly. Your tone of voice also matters. Speaking too softly might make it hard for people to hear you, while speaking too quickly can make you seem nervous. Aim for a clear, steady voice.
Great points, Thomas. So, listeners, when you're introducing yourself, remember that your nonverbal communication can make as much of an impact as what you say. Practice using positive body language to complement your words. We've talked about various situations, but what about adapting your introduction based on your audience? Thomas, how would you adjust your introduction depending on who you're speaking to?
That's a great question, Jennifer. The key is to be mindful of who you're talking to and what's relevant to them. For example, if you're at a professional event, you'll want to highlight your work experience and skills. But if you're at a social event, you might focus more on your interests or hobbies.
Exactly. It's all about tailoring your introduction to fit the context. For instance, when introducing yourself to someone in your industry, you might say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I work in digital marketing." But at a neighborhood barbecue, you could say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I love cooking and gardening."
Yes, and being flexible with your introduction shows that you're aware of the context and the people you're speaking to. It also helps you connect better with your audience because you're sharing information that's relevant to them.
That's a great point. It's also important to be adaptable if you're introducing yourself in different cultural contexts. As we discussed earlier, some cultures may expect more formal introductions, while others prefer a more casual approach.
Right. The more you practice adapting your introduction, the easier it becomes to adjust to different situations and audiences.
Exactly. So, listeners, think about who you're talking to and what they might find interesting or important. Adjusting your introduction to suit the audience will help you make stronger connections. Networking events can be a bit tricky because you're often meeting lots of new people in a short amount of time. Thomas, how would you approach introductions in a networking environment?
In a networking event, it's important to keep your introduction concise but impactful. You want to quickly communicate who you are and what you do, while also leaving room for the other person to share about themselves.
Right. For example, you could say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer, a digital marketing consultant. I specialize in helping businesses grow their online presence." This gives the other person a clear idea of what you do without taking up too much time.
Exactly. Another tip is to include a question or invitation to continue the conversation. You might say something like, "What about you? What field are you in?" This encourages a two-way exchange and makes the introduction more dynamic.
That's a great idea. And in networking events, it's also important to be mindful of the time. You want to make meaningful connections, but you also need to be aware that the other person might have limited time to talk.
Yes, keeping it short and engaging is key. And don't forget to follow up after the event. If you exchanged contact information, send a quick message to remind them of your conversation and express your interest in staying connected.
Great point. Networking is about building relationships, so following up is crucial. A brief but thoughtful introduction can set the stage for a more meaningful connection later on. Let's talk about group settings. Sometimes you need to introduce yourself to multiple people at once. Thomas, how would you handle that?
In group settings, you want to be clear and concise, but also address everyone in the group. Start with a simple greeting like, "Hi everyone, I'm Thomas." Then, share a little bit about yourself that's relevant to the context of the group.
Right. For example, if you're in a professional workshop, you might say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I work in marketing, and I'm really excited to be part of this workshop today." This gives everyone a quick idea of who you are and why you're there.
Exactly. And if it's a more informal group, you can be a bit more relaxed. You could say something like, "Hi, I'm Thomas. I enjoy hiking and just moved to the area." This keeps things light and approachable.
That's a great point. It's also important to make eye contact with different people in the group while you're speaking. This helps engage everyone and makes your introduction feel more personal.
Yes, engaging with the group is key. And remember, if you're asked to introduce yourself in front of a large audience, take a deep breath and speak slowly. It can be nerve-wracking, but the more you practice, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. Group introductions might feel a bit daunting, but with practice, you'll become more comfortable introducing yourself in any setting. Let's talk about sharing personal interests when introducing yourself. Sometimes adding a personal touch can help others connect with you. Thomas, how do you decide what personal information to share?
It depends on the situation. In professional settings, you might want to keep it brief and related to your work. But in more casual settings, sharing a hobby or interest can help make your introduction more relatable.
That's true. For example, you could say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I work in marketing, and in my free time, I enjoy painting." This not only introduces you professionally, but also gives others a glimpse into your personal interests.
Exactly. It's a great way to find common ground with the person you're speaking to. If they also enjoy painting or are interested in the arts, it can lead to a deeper conversation.
That's a good point. It's also helpful to share interests that might relate to the current situation. For example, if you're at a networking event for outdoor enthusiasts, mentioning your love of hiking could be a great conversation starter.
Yes, tailoring your personal interests to the context can make your introduction even more effective. It helps build connections based on shared experiences or interests.
So don't be afraid to add a personal touch to your introduction. It can make you more memorable and relatable to the people you meet. Now, after you introduce yourself, people might ask follow-up questions. Thomas, how do you handle that?
Follow-up questions are a great opportunity to dive deeper into the conversation. If someone asks you about your job or hobbies, it shows that they're interested. It's important to answer confidently and with enough detail to keep the conversation going.
That's right. For example, if someone asks, "What kind of marketing do you do?" You could respond with, "I specialize in digital marketing, particularly social media strategies and online campaigns."
Exactly. You want to give a bit more detail, but not overwhelm them with too much information. Keep it relevant and interesting.
And if you don't know how to answer right away, it's okay to take a moment to think. It's better to pause and give a thoughtful response than to rush through an answer.
That's true. Taking your time shows that you're engaged in the conversation and that you're considering their question carefully.
So, listeners, don't be afraid of follow-up questions. They're a great way to keep the conversation flowing and show that you're open to deeper discussions. We've covered a lot of ground, but one last tip: practice. Thomas, how important is practicing your introduction before important events?
Practice is key, Jennifer. Even if it's just a quick introduction, practicing can help you feel more confident and natural when you're meeting new people. It also helps you find the right words and avoid stumbling over your introduction.
Exactly. You can practice in front of a mirror, with friends, or even by recording yourself. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll be when it's time to introduce yourself for real.
And don't just practice the words, practice your body language too. Stand tall, smile, and make eye contact while you're practicing. This helps you develop positive nonverbal communication habits.
That's a great point. Practicing doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it can make a big difference in how you feel and how you come across when introducing yourself.
Exactly. So, listeners, take a few minutes before your next big event to practice your introduction. It'll help you feel more prepared and confident when meeting new people.
Let's switch gears and talk about introducing yourself in a casual, social setting, like a party or gathering. Thomas, how would you approach it?
In a social setting, your introduction can be a lot more relaxed and informal. You can keep it light and fun. For example, you might say, "Hey, I'm Thomas. I love music and recently started learning guitar."
That sounds great. It's important to keep the tone of the event in mind, right? If everyone's casual and having fun, you don't need to be super formal.
Exactly. You want to match the vibe of the environment. And don't be afraid to share something interesting or unique about yourself. It can be a great conversation starter.
Right, sharing something that people can relate to or ask about can make the introduction more engaging. Maybe something like, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I've been traveling a lot recently, just got back from Thailand."
That's a perfect example. People will naturally want to ask you more about your travels, and it keeps the conversation flowing.
So, in social settings, keep it light, relatable, and fun. It's all about making connections, not just exchanging information. Now, let's talk about introductions in a work environment, especially when meeting new colleagues. What's your strategy for this, Thomas?
When meeting new colleagues, it's important to strike a balance between professionalism and approachability. You want to be clear about your role, but also open to building relationships.
Right, you could say something like, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'll be joining the marketing team as the new social media coordinator. Looking forward to working with all of you."
Exactly. This gives them a clear understanding of who you are and what you'll be doing, but it also sets a friendly tone. You can add something like, if anyone has any tips for settling in, I'd love to hear them.
That's a nice touch. It shows that you're approachable and open to learning from your new colleagues, which can help build rapport right away.
And don't forget to ask about them as well. Show interest in their roles or ask how long they've been with the company. It helps to create a two-way conversation from the start.
In today's world, we often have to introduce ourselves in virtual meetings. How would you handle that, Thomas?
In an online meeting, clarity is key. You want to make sure your introduction is clear and concise since virtual communication can sometimes feel a bit disconnected.
Right, especially with things like poor audio or internet lag. I'd recommend something like, "Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer. I work in project management and I'm based in New York." Keep it simple but informative.
Exactly. And it's important to speak clearly and a bit slower than you might in person. This helps ensure that everyone can hear and understand you, especially if they're in different time zones or countries.
That's a good point. You can also engage others by asking a quick question, like, "Where's everyone dialing in from today?" It makes the virtual environment feel a bit more personal.
Definitely. Virtual meetings can feel distant, so anything you can do to make it more interactive helps build a sense of connection right from the start.
Introductions in job interviews are particularly important. Thomas, what should listeners keep in mind when introducing themselves in that setting?
In a job interview, your introduction needs to be polished but not overly rehearsed. You want to convey confidence, professionalism, and a bit of your personality. Start with a smile and make eye contact.
For sure, a good example might be, "Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I'm excited about this opportunity. I have 5 years of experience in marketing with a focus on digital campaigns."
Exactly. Keep it brief, but make sure you highlight key strengths that are relevant to the job. And always express enthusiasm for the opportunity. It shows the interviewer that you're genuinely interested in the role.
It's also helpful to research the company ahead of time and tailor your introduction to reflect that. You could mention why you're particularly interested in their company or industry.
That's a great idea. A tailored introduction shows that you've done your homework and that you're serious about the role.
What about when you've met someone before, but they may not remember you? How do you handle reintroductions, Thomas?
In those cases, it's helpful to gently remind them of where or when you met. You can say, "Hi, I'm Thomas. We met briefly at last year's conference on digital marketing."
That's a nice, casual way to reintroduce yourself without making the other person feel awkward for not remembering you. And it helps jog their memory.
Exactly. And if they still don't remember, it's no big deal. Just continue the conversation naturally as if it's the first time you're meeting.
It's all about being gracious and understanding. People meet a lot of new faces, so reintroductions are pretty common.
Yes, and the important thing is to focus on building the relationship going forward rather than dwelling on whether or not they remember you.
Let's discuss cultural differences. When introducing yourself to someone from a different culture, what should listeners keep in mind?
It's important to be aware of cultural norms and etiquette. Some cultures may prefer more formal introductions, while others might be more casual. It's always a good idea to do a little research if you're unsure.
For example, in some cultures, it's respectful to use titles like Mr. or Ms. during an introduction, whereas in others, a first-name basis might be the norm right away.
Exactly. And when in doubt, start formal and let the other person lead the way. They'll usually signal if it's okay to be more informal.
That's great advice. And remember, in some cultures, it's important to offer a business card or give a formal handshake during an introduction.
Yes, being mindful of these small cultural details can help make a great first impression and show respect for the other person's background.
Sometimes introductions don't go as smoothly as we'd like. Thomas, what do you do if an introduction feels a bit awkward?
It happens to everyone at some point. The best thing to do is stay calm and laugh it off. If you stumble over your words, you can say something like, "Oops, I got a bit tongue-tied there. Let me try that again."
That's a great approach. Humor can help ease the tension and make the situation feel less awkward.
Yes, and if you forget someone's name or don't catch it the first time, it's okay to ask again. You can say, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Could you repeat it for me?"
Exactly. Most people won't mind if you ask for clarification. It's better to ask than to pretend you know their name and avoid using it. That's right. The key is to stay confident, even if the introduction doesn't go perfectly. We're all human, and mistakes happen.
For our listeners who might feel nervous about introducing themselves, do you have any tips, Thomas?
It's completely normal to feel nervous, especially in new or intimidating situations. One trick is to take a deep breath before you speak. This helps calm your nerves and gives you a moment to collect your thoughts. That's a great tip. You can also practice what you're going to say beforehand. Even if you don't stick to a script, having a basic plan can make you feel more prepared.
Absolutely. And remember, most people are focused on themselves, not on how you're introducing yourself. They're likely not judging you as harshly as you might think.
That's such a good point. We often overestimate how much others are paying attention to us. Just be yourself, and the introduction will go smoothly.
Exactly. Confidence comes with practice, so the more you introduce yourself, the more comfortable you'll feel over time.
Networking events can be a bit intimidating, especially when you need to introduce yourself to many people. Thomas, what's your strategy for these situations?
Networking events are all about making connections, so it's important to keep your introduction short but impactful. I usually go with something like, "Hi, I'm Thomas. I work in digital marketing, focusing on social media strategies."
That's a great approach, straight to the point but still informative. You could also add something personal to make the introduction more memorable, like, "In my free time, I enjoy hiking and exploring new places."
Exactly. It helps people remember you, and it can also lead to further conversation. After introducing yourself, don't forget to ask the other person about their work or interests.
Yes, asking questions shows that you're interested in them, and it helps to establish a connection right from the start. When you're at a conference or giving a public talk, introductions can set the tone for your presentation. How would you approach that, Thomas?
For a public speaking event or conference, your introduction needs to be more formal and engaging. Start with a strong opening line, like, "Good morning, I'm Thomas, and today I'll be sharing insights on the latest trends in digital marketing."
That sounds confident and clear. It's also helpful to give the audience a reason to listen, right? You could say something like, "Over the past decade, I've worked with numerous companies to build their online presence, and I'm excited to share what I've learned with you."
Exactly. It's all about showing that you have valuable knowledge to offer. And just like in networking events, don't forget to maintain eye contact and smile. It helps engage the audience.
Great point. Engaging the audience from the beginning can make the rest of your presentation flow more smoothly. We've talked a lot about verbal introductions, but what about written ones, like in emails? How should you introduce yourself in a professional email, Thomas?
In an email, clarity and conciseness are key. You want to introduce yourself quickly and state your purpose right away. For example, "Hello, I'm Thomas, and I'm reaching out to discuss potential collaboration opportunities in digital marketing."
That's a strong, clear introduction. It's also a good idea to include a bit of context, like how you found their contact information or why you're reaching out. Something like, "I came across your profile on LinkedIn and thought we might have some synergies."
Exactly. It's important to keep it brief but friendly. And always end your introduction with a call to action, like, "I'd love to set up a time to discuss further."
Write a clear and polite call to action helps guide the conversation forward. If you're learning a new language, introducing yourself can be a bit more challenging. Thomas, what tips do you have for listeners trying to introduce themselves in a foreign language?
First of all, keep it simple. Use basic sentences and phrases that you've practiced. For example, if you're learning Spanish, you could say, Hola, me llamo Thomas. Soy de los Estados Unidos. Hi, my name is Thomas. I'm from the United States.
That's a good start. It's also helpful to learn key phrases like nice to meet you or how are you, which are common in introductions. And don't worry too much about getting everything perfect. It's the effort that counts.
Exactly. People appreciate the effort, and they'll likely be understanding if you make small mistakes. The important thing is to stay confident and keep practicing.
Yes, confidence is key. The more you practice introducing yourself in a foreign language, the more natural it will feel. We've covered a lot of ground on introductions today. Thomas, do you have any final tips for our listeners?
The most important thing is to be authentic. Whether you're introducing yourself in a professional setting, a social environment, or even in a foreign language, being yourself helps to create genuine connections.
I agree. And remember, introductions are just the beginning of a conversation. Don't put too much pressure on getting it perfect. Focus on being open and approachable.
Yes, and practice makes perfect. The more you introduce yourself in different situations, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
That's a great note to end on. Keep practicing, and soon introductions will feel like second nature.